The weather was perfect. It was nice and cloudy, and the wind that blew through her hair was delightfully cold. Right, she breathed, shutting her laptop down and checking her watch. I have about an hour before my next period. She turned to her friend and confidant, Michiko, who was mindlessly flipping through a math textbook. I'm heading to the cafe now, Mayan said, standing up. Want to come with me? Michiko shook her head. I have a class in 10 minutes. Bring me back a large mocha though. Mayan shrugged. Seat yourself. As she stood up, fixing her scarf around her neck, Michiko put her book down and stared at her friend curiously. You've been going to that cafe for a while now. She nodded. What's it called again? Notes, I think. Ah, that. My sister was talking about the barista that works there too. He looks like a student, but dear God, he was a giant. He was a 6-footer apparently. Michiko stretched her hand above her head to prove her point. I'm guessing he goes to this university. I've seen him around a few times, but it's hard to see over the flock of obnoxious girls fawning over him. He's quite the ladies' man, Mayan commented lightly. You bet. He's a sight for sore eyes, that's for sure. Michiko yawned. Ever see him there? I don't remember, Mayan admitted. I'm usually fixated on my drink and my phone, not the barista. Well, check him out, alright? Michiko attempted to sound nonchalant and impassive, but the light blush that dusted her cheeks said otherwise. Mayan smirked. Want his number 2? Mayan teased. Michiko lit up, and you laughed. Waving goodbye to her friend, Mayan set off for her destination, whistling happily as she walked. The gloomy weather was supposed to bring the person down, but it seemed to do the opposite for the student. Seeing the gray clouds peacefully rolling across the sky was calming, and the fresh cold wind danced playfully around her, enveloping her in a comfortable blanket. She was anticipating the rain, loving the feeling of sitting in a warm cafe on a particularly heavy downpour. She sat by the window in one of those comfy armchairs, a cup of steaming hot coffee in her hands. The cafe's soothing music would bounce off the wooden walls, and she'd happily hum along to the tune of the raindrops sliding down the glass windows. The fact that the place she was heading for might have turned the air conditioning on already made her quicken her pace. You were elated as you pulled the door open, happily chirping a good morning to whoever was inside. To her delight, she was the only customer around, and she clearly heard the welcome of what seemed to be the barista, hidden behind the counter. As expected, the coffee was already extremely chilly. Mayan breathed in the scent of cakes and coffees, and smiled brightly. She practically skipped to the counter, looking up at the menu. Out of nowhere, a mop of brown hair popped out from behind the cashier, a bright smile on his face. Mayan took a step back, eyebrows raised in surprise. It was the barista, and judging by the silence behind the staff curtain, he was the only one working. Mayan and the barista laughed. Sorry, he said. I didn't mean to scare you. Mayan smiled and waved her hand dismissively. It's fine. He whipped out a notepad and a pen. So what are we having today? A cappuccino, please, Mayan decided. You got it, he said, immediately heading to the back. Mayan wandered over to a small coffee table by the window. Thankfully, there was a huge armchair next to it, and as she plopped down in the seat, she yelled as it almost enveloped her in a sea of comfort and fluff. She giggled, adjusted herself, crossing her legs underneath her. She leaned on one of the armrests and gazed out of the window, dreamily admiring the leaves scuttling across the road in the wind. Mayan hummed to a song that had suddenly played in the shop. Coincidentally, it was one of her favorites, and it only added to the bubbly feeling that she had felt ever since the first gray cloud rolled into the sky. A few minutes later, she was snapped out of her trance as the cup of steaming coffee was placed on the table in front of her. She sat up eagerly and admired the foam that had settled on the top, which had the form of a lazy egg, which went by the name Gudetama. Wow, she said admiringly. I've never had Gudetama on my coffee before. The barista let out a pleased laugh. I try other characters as well, but this is the one that I can do best. He placed a stash of napkins on the table. Hey, the manager's not around, and my shift ends in 2 hours. Do you mind if I sit here? By all means. He smiled calmly, gesturing to the seat in front of you. His name tag flashed in the light as she sat down, and Wai-in caught a glimpse of his name. Oikawa Tooru. She read silently. Oikawa settled into his seat with a relieved sigh, stretching his arms over his head. He had quite the build, with broad shoulders and well-toned arms. Wai-in's eyes widened, and she looked away, pretending to have not seen the way his work shirt lifted ever so slightly as he stretched. He turned to look at her with a bright grin, which made Wai-in smile as well. His bubbly demeanor was contagious, and Wai-in caught it immediately. I bet this is the guy Michiko's talking about, she thought. Award-winning smile, athletic build, extremely good looks. This guy's catnip for the eyes. So, Oikawa said, I've only started working here recently, but I've seen you around a lot. Are you from around here? Yes. Wai-in answered. I go to that university. She pointed to the certain institution a few blocks away. Same here. Oikawa grinned. I'm Oikawa Tooru. I'm a first year, and I took up sports medicine. Wai-in fought the urge to say, of course you did. I'm LNYN. I'm a second year. I took up psychology. Oikawa let out a surprised noise and leaned away from her in surprise. To her confusion, he looked incredulous and horrified at the same time. What is it? You're a second year. What makes you my upperclassman? He stood, and immediately bowed, so fast that Wai-in was terrified that he would break his back. I'm sorry for being too forward, Ellen-senpai. Wai-in began shaking her head and waving her hands, panicked. I don't care much about the honorifics, she said quickly. I don't use them when it comes to people at school, so I'd rather you don't too. And just Wai-in is fine. Oikawa looked up at her from his bow. But you're older than me. It's just 1 year, Oikawa. Please sit down. Reluctantly, Oikawa took his seat, but he looked incredibly tense. He couldn't help but giggle. Behind his charm and overall winning personality, he still had a great deal of respect for his seniors, and was something else to admire. Once Oikawa had regained his composure, he casually leaned on the armrest of his seat. So, Wai-in, he said, emphasizing her first name. You study psychology? Yep. Try reading my mind then. Oikawa fixed her with a playful glare, to which Wai-in laughed. It doesn't work that way, she explained calmly. We study how the human brain works, the different personalities that people have, look into mental illnesses. Basically, we tap into how people work and what they feel. He blinked. Then a little white smile spread across his face. Well, you don't need a degree in psychology to figure out what I'm feeling, Wai-in. Wai-in turned bright red and choked on her drink, sitting up her to straighter as her hand shot out to cover her mouth. Oikawa laughed at her flustered expression, but graciously handed her a few tissues. Not shy at all, are you? Wai-in said, laughing as she put her drink on the table. Oikawa shrugged. I suppose it's one of my greatest talents. Wai-in placed her elbows on her folded legs, leaning forward eagerly. What else are your greatest talents? They ended up talking for half an hour about their personal interests, their aspirations, and the seemingly insignificant things became topics of hilarious conversations between them. You learned that Oikawa attended Oppa Josai before he headed into university, and played as the captain of the volleyball team. She tried not to think about how that was the primary reason for his insanely glorious build, leaving her with a blush that she hid behind her cup of coffee. She mentioned that the university housed a well-rounded volleyball team, and they had lit up like a child on Christmas Day. As rude as it sounded, Oikawa kept drifting in and out of their conversation. He was too busy being fixated as she talked about her favorite classes. She had an air of happiness around her, a happiness that made him gravitate towards her. Despite being a college student, she had quite a well-rested face, and she struck him as the person that never wore something even remotely close to a frown. He found her refreshing in that way. Mine checked her watch as she set her empty cup down. "Crap, my next class is in 30 minutes, she said, pulling her scarf down and reaching for her wallet. Oikawa saw the movement and shot his hand out to grab hers, meeting her surprised expression with a warm smile. "It's on the house." "What? You can't possibly—" "I insist," he said calmly. "Just make sure you come around here often." He watched with satisfaction as Wayne blushed, averting her gaze. Alright, I will." Oikawa led her to the door, opening it for her. "Oh, hold on a sec," he said, darting to the table and handing her the tissues from earlier. He held them up questioningly. "This is—" Oikawa winked, in case he suddenly decided to spray her drink everywhere. Wayne laughed at that, and Oikawa was reminded of the cool breeze back home. It was a breeze that made the wind chimes sound clear as glass, and although it usually signified the start of a storm, he found the steady beat of rain comforting. "Thank you, Oikawa. I'll see you around." While walking back to school with a ridiculous smile on her face, Wayne suddenly stopped. She noticed a small crowl on the napkins that Oikawa had handed to her. "Let me know if you feel like reading my mind again." Next to it was his number. "Oh yeah," she whispered. "I forgot my chica's drink." She let out a short, disbelieving laugh before continuing on her way, and in that moment, the rain began to pour.